Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Who Gets Ahead, the podcast series where we'll talk about what we are doing to increase socio-economic diversity at senior levels in financial and professional services across the UK and why we need to do it. I'm your host, Michael Barrington Hibbert, and I'm the managing partner and founder of Barrington Hibbert Associates, a leading talent acquisition, leadership development and diversity advisory firm which specialises in financial services. Over the course of this series, we'll be joined by senior representatives from across financial and professional services who are all involved with the government-commissioned Socio-Economic Diversity Taskforce, led by the City of London Corporation. We have a vision for equity of progression, where high performance is valued over fit and polish. This task force is an opportunity to change UK financial and professional services. And over the course of this podcast, you'll find out how greater social economic diversity provides an opportunity to meet broader diversity and inclusion objectives, boost productivity, access a wider pool of talent, and maximise global competitiveness. Today on Who Gets Ahead, we're joined by Lord Mayor Alderman Vincent Keaveny. As part of the task force, he is co-chair of Workstream 2, which develops a peer network for financial services employers. A very warm welcome to you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'm really pleased to be talking to you today and to be able to talk a little bit and to share my thoughts about the work we're doing in the Socio-Economic Diversity Taskforce.
Wonderful. And it is a huge honour to be with you today, Lord Mayor. What I was interested, and I think our listeners are keen to understand, Lord Mayor, is the beginning. And what I mean by that, I understand you grew up in Ireland. I was very keen just to sort of understand your background from a schooling standpoint and your career and basically what really got you behind the social diversity initiative in the first place.
I came to London in early 1989 as a newly qualified Irish lawyer, wanting to spend a couple of years, maybe 18 months, maybe 2 years, maybe a bit longer, getting a bit of city experience before I went back to practice in Dublin. That was my plan. And here I am 33 years later, at the start of my year as Lord Mayor. So that, I think, tells you a story itself about London. I grew up in Dublin in a fairly comfortable professional background. I have to say, I was lucky. I went to a good school, went on to university. My father was a medical man. But Dublin, Ireland was quite a different place. I mean, a very different society to England. The real contrast to growing up, I suspect, to a typical experience in England. It's a very much, certainly it was in the 1970s into the 1980s when I was going to college. It was a very much flatter society. There wasn't the same sense of class in Ireland at all as you got here, and actually pretty much everybody, all of my friends, no matter some of them their families were doing really well in business, but none of them were very far from having parents or grandparents that grew up on small farms all over Ireland. So there was that sense that everybody was one generation away from life in the country, and in many cases, really hard lives in the country. That sense of a shared recent experience of fairly challenging circumstances, I think, made it a much more flatter, in many ways more united society than I suspect would be the case growing up here in England. It did feel quite different suddenly finding myself in London and beginning to deal with all of those things that we know and we recognise here in England around class, around background, around schooling, all of those sorts of things that make quite a significant difference to outcomes in lives here.
Thank you. I was just fascinated in terms of you coming over to London, late 80s. How was that when you first took up your first role? Did you feel an element of exclusion given the fact that you weren't from the United Kingdom, as it were? You weren't necessarily coming from a a private education in the United Kingdom. Did you find that as a barrier of entry?
One, I didn't find it a barrier to entry in the sense that I think even to this day here in England, here in the probably across Britain actually, Irish graduates coming over sort of don't fit into any of the boxes that people use mentally when they're looking at people here in England. In many cases, they get a bit of a free pass on the whole class thing because we just don't fit in. We just don't fit into the system. So in that respect, I suppose I wouldn't say there was barriers to entry, but absolutely yes. One thing that I was very conscious of, and I can still feel it at times, even now, despite the fact I find myself walking into this role, I never had that network of school connections, college connections, university connections. That was not something that I had here.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Lord Mayor, because the outside looking in, someone would look at your position and you've had a fantastic legal career with some of the top firms internationally, and they would make assumptions that it has been easy. So again, the objective of asking these questions was really around intersectionality, because it is really important. And again, this leads me to why you really have got behind the Socio-Economic Diversity Taskforce. So I understand that you are the co-chair. Can you tell us what this involves and why you thought it was so important to raise this such an important issue?
My real engagement around social mobility started when I was a graduate recruitment partner in my previous firm back in the second half of the 2000s. So I had the graduate recruitment partner role at my previous firm, and I loved it. I think I have to say, I think that's probably the best sort of management role in any law firm, because you're out there meeting generally younger people at the start of their careers and helping them make decisions and giving them opportunities. And it's a brilliant, energizing role. It's great, and I loved it. When you're meeting people from every background, as you do in that role, it was becoming pretty clear to me that we had an issue around, at that point, particularly around entry into the legal profession and indeed the professional services and financial services sector generally. You could see young people coming through, and they were failing at particular points in the process, and in many respects the process was failing them because of the barriers that we were putting up. And that was what really began to make me think about, began to look at and see this issue that's sitting there at the heart of so much of our financial professional services sectors. The second thing, as I then became more involved in the city, I found myself being elected as an alderman and then going through getting on that path that has led me to become Lord Mayor. One of the things we talk about, and one of the things I'm passionate about, as you can imagine with my background, is that London has to be home to the best global talent. One of the ways we will keep this city and this country where it needs to be top of the international tree in financial professional services is by making sure that we're welcoming to international talent, diverse global talent. But we can't do that. We cannot do that without addressing the issue that we've got sitting here at home. We've got to look after our homegrown talent too.
If I could play devil's advocate here, Lord Mayor, I'm sat here and I've got 3 children in private school. And I understand that 10% of the UK population has a private school education. And if you look at the leadership roles across the UK, 90% of those leadership roles are fulfilled by that 10%. In your position, talk to me about the benefits of why we should have more of a diverse leadership from a non-professional background. Why is that going to make a fundamental difference to the UK economy? And also, if you look at the 90% of the leaders across UK industry, why would they be incentivised to open that up to move things forward?
There are so many really strong arguments for this. that I almost don't know where to begin, Michael. And I've had conversations with people on at every sort of end of the political spectrum about this, and I think there is there are really hard, sound economic reasons for doing this, as well as really strong moral reasons for doing it. And I think in terms of the economic and business case, and then just on that, one of the work streams in our task force is going to be looking at precisely some of these issues, the business case, the economic metrics for greater diversity in the financial services sector. And the work stream that Andy Haldane is leading in the task force. There's a lot of evidence now generated by McKinsey and others that more diverse organizations make better decisions. And I would say that actually, when you look at the experience over the last few years, and particularly over the pandemic period, we can see the benefit of diversity of thought, the absence of groupthink in better decision making. So I think there's a very strong correlation there between diverse organizations, senior management diversity, and better decisions, which ultimately make for better business, more successful business, more profitable business. I think there's also the need to have businesses which reflect society. So you've got to be able to appeal to future employees to have a business which actually looks like the society that they know and they feel comfortable in. If you've got a business which is heavily skewed with one social class occupying 90% of the senior management roles or whatever it is, that is not a business which reflects wider society. And you will struggle over time to recruit the range of talent that you need across the workforce. And the third element, and I think this is something that businesses are seeing now, waking up to in a actually very positive and engaged way, is that customers and other commercial stakeholders are looking for it too. So customers actually now see businesses. They want businesses again to reflect society more closely. So they want their customer experience to be one where they feel the business they're dealing with is a business that reflects the world they live in, their world, the connections that they have around them. That customer experience, I think, is causing a lot of businesses to actually sit up and take notice of the issue for the first time.
And I understand you've consulted over 100 organisations across the country, and you've been able to build out a peer network that responds to these common challenges. So what are the themes that you're hearing? Is it consistent in London and slightly different in Yorkshire? Are there any other themes that you can share with the listeners?
I don't see this as a geographically focused issue. I think it really reflects where businesses are. There's a big issue here around the extent to which smaller businesses have got the resources, the knowledge to tackle this issue in the way that they will need to do. And that's one of the things that's coming out increasingly from the work that we're doing. It's the need for support and for resources and for an understanding of where those resources can be found. I think there's a really important piece of work here to be done. There's some very good information, there's toolkits available. There's organizations which are prepared to talk about what works, what doesn't work, best practice. But in fact, a lot of organizations just don't even know where to start.
Lord Mayor, I have one more question I wanted to ask you, and I've been listening to you reflect about your upbringing in Ireland and your journey in law and how you really came alive being a recruitment partner. Were these experiences, because again, many people looking from the outside in would say this is a man of privilege, but given your lived experiences, is these lived experiences the reason why you wanted to include socio-economic diversity as a core element of your mayoral programme?
Absolutely. I cannot deny I've had some very good fortune in my life. I would regard myself as privileged. I think it would be absolutely right to I can't deny that. As I grew up in a very comfortable home, I was very lucky to have two loving parents who thankfully are still with us. I will put my hands up and say, yes, I come from a privileged background, but I also, I put myself in a situation, took myself over to London and had to start from scratch. I started building those networks. So I know what it's like when you suddenly walk into it and you sort of think, where does this career go? Where will I end up in 10 years' time? But I hope that people, when they look at it and when they hear my story, they'll actually see that there are some fantastic opportunities. And I hope that some of the work I can do over the next year as Lord Mayor will help others have better access and better opportunities than they do today.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Who Gets Ahead. And a special thank you to Lord Mayor Alderman Vincent Keaveny for being with us today. Join us next time where Task Force members Nick Miller and Catherine McGuinness will discuss levelling up, the importance of collecting data and intersectionality. For more information on the Socio-Economic Diversity Task Force, please type the City of London Who Gets Ahead into your search bar to find out our webpage and sign up to our newsletter to stay up to date. On social media, please visit City of London Corporation on LinkedIn. On Twitter, it's City of London. And on YouTube, The Global City. Who Gets Ahead is produced by trading and education firm OSTC. A special thank you for your kind support on this series. Find out more at OSTC on Twitter and OSTC Limited on LinkedIn.